Well, despite numerous reports of army shelling, US officials say they are not aware of Kiev violating the truce. That's what our correspondent Yanni Chikian was told when she went to the State Department briefing.
The State Department spokesperson was not familiar with the incident. He did not seem to be familiar with any reports about the Ukrainian army's shelling of residential areas in eastern Ukraine. It also seemed to me that the State Department spokesperson was going out of his way to avoid answering questions about the Ukrainian government's actions, choosing to solely focus on violations by the rebels. Take a listen.
We again call for a full cessation of hostilities and for full implementation of the Minsk agreements, including unrestricted and safe access for OSCE monitors so they can monitor and verify the ceasefire and the heavy weapons withdrawal.
Are you aware that the Ukrainian army has used heavy artillery in residential areas on a number of occasions in recent weeks? And how is that consistent with the Minsk agreements that everybody should abide by?
You've cited reports with which I'm unfamiliar, so I'm not going to comment on them.
How closely do you follow with what's happening in eastern Ukraine? Do you read daily reports or only what the Ukrainian government is telling you?
Look, as I've said, the OSCE plays a monitoring role on the ground, and if you look at the OSCE's reports,
they do report about those shellings.
They also report the violence that I've described, which continues on the Ukrainian side of the ceasefire lines. And again, the primary source of violations of the Minsk agreements and the ceasefire come from the separatists on the Russian side. So
you're saying their potential violations justify the Ukrainian government's violations?
Look,
is that what you're saying?
I really don't have anything to add beyond my statement earlier, that the overwhelming number of violations are coming from the Russian and separatist side in eastern Ukraine.
We often hear U.S. officials say how important the Minsk agreements are. But they apparently also think that one side should abide by the agreements more than the other. The NATO chief also spoke in Washington this Wednesday, and he urged all parties to fully implement the Minsk agreements. But Mr. Stoltenberg went on to say that the conflict in Ukraine is about much more than just Ukraine.
We cannot look at Russia's aggressive actions in Ukraine in isolation. They are part of a disturbing pattern of Russian behavior that goes well beyond Ukraine.
And just today, at the same time, Vice President Joe Biden spoke along the same lines, saying Ukraine is about much more, saying it's about the future of NATO, our unity, our strength, about the future of Russia itself. He said Russia is taking actions to weaken and undermine its European neighbors and reassert its hegemonic ambitions. He urged European allies to spend more on defense. So top Western officials see Ukraine as an international conflict where they all have a stake. And in light of this, perhaps it is not surprising that when Kiev violates its commitments under certain agreements, U.S. and European officials are prepared to stand by Kiev no matter what.